Greetings and hello. Okay, now for another bitter and grim topic, where the targets are helpless baby boys and male children. Circumcision. That term is just a friendly euphemism that does not even begin to describe the damage of this practice. Male genital mutilation perfectly encapsulates this term and does not sugarcoat reality. In fact, mutilation does not even scratch the surface, as it is sexual battery, rape, child abuse and torture. It is the worst form of torture someone can come up with, right next to removing the whole organ. I do not use the term degenerate, but I will make an exception for this. Any parent who orders or goes along with mutilating the genitals of their child is degenerate scum who needs their kids taken away and themselves put behind bars. Only a parent who does not love their child would give their son away to a quack to be cut, on top of having to pay for it. Parents do not care about children. This is expanded on by an order of magnitude when it comes to boys. Even though everyone may virtue signal to protect the children, boys are in the same camp as adult men because they belong to the male sex. Therefore they get their bodies mutilated starting on day one. Their indoctrination of self-loathing starts with a blade to their genitals when they are too young to fight back. They are told to know their place by a society that uses them as tools. Male genital mutilation is one such brand, which is a physical representation that society carves into the most intimate parts of men to show them how it really feels about them. It is a fuck you to them as a person and their personal pleasure. Anyone who denies that this is mutilation is either brain dead on a clinically insane level, or just a misandrist wanting to dominate men. The vast majority of cases like this are the latter. Circumcision fits the definition cleanly and perfectly, which is to inflict a violent disfiguring injury, and circumcision is disfiguring because it leaves a mark and alters the body. Anyone can put one and one together and see that the definition fits. It's only their high level of misandry which makes them dishonest. And let's examine this further, as their argument about genital mutilation not being genital mutilation never holds against females. Everyone loves to boast about how wrong and terrible female genital mutilation is, and that it needs to be stopped. This is even when it is already banned entirely in the West. At the same time, no one cares that mutilation is mutilation when it comes to equality for boys. This proves feminism is not about equality but female supremacy. Male circumcision is equivalent to clitoral hood removal in girls, which is also classified as mutilation, as any modification to the genitals of females. The male foreskin is also very important to the functioning of the organ, but we will get into that later. No one pays attention or credence when you tell them this because they hate boys, thus are fine with the countless mutilations of male babies occurring. In debates where this is brought up, the whole male circumcision is not the same thing as female genital mutilation will be said, even if you already debunked it. The vile hatred behind this is to destroy males, even in their most vulnerable form as babies, to retain universal female victimhood. It is not about knowledge but the person telling the man to know his place and put up with his abuse. Such people need to be jailed for misandry and enabling violence against men. Male genital mutilation removes the most sensitive part of the penis. The foreskin contains thousands of nerve endings which allow the man to control his enjoyment and gives him a larger spectrum of it. This is counter to the untrue claim that intact men finish too quickly. On the contrary, the specialized nerves allow the man to control his ejaculation, unlike a mutilated penis where such a mechanism has been removed, thus disabling such a function. This is compounded by how all the parts of the foreskin work together. The foreskin is tied to the frenulum, which is the most sensitive part on the penis. It is said the nerve density in this part rivals that of the female clitoris. This structure connects the foreskin to the glands and allows it to glide, causing the man much more pleasure. This does not take into account the rigid band at the end of the foreskin, which in itself is another nerve-dense structure. It acts to keep the natural lubricant in the penis, which does not require the use of lubricant like a dried-out cut penis. This natural lubrication allows the glands to be moist and sensitive. This is due to the foreskin being a sleeve which covers up the glands and prevents the glands from rubbing against the elements. Not counting the extra nerves provided by the foreskin itself, this makes the organ much more sensitive as it is able to feel more and is not covered up by layers and layers of keratinized skin. The mutilation of the penis through circumcision reduces sensitivity by 75 to 90%. And this is exactly why it is done to male babies but not females. Plus, genital mutilation is much more damaging on average to boys than it is girls. The foreskin whose functions were described before is removed in an average circumcision, but most female circumcisions are pinpricks to draw blood. Feminists rave on about wanting to end female genital mutilation, but deliberately refuse, that's right, refuse to look under their noses. This is because the feminists' goal is giving privileges to women at the expense of men. And feminists get off to male suffering, so they naturally see male genital mutilation as a plus, promoting it in the medical field which is dominated by them, using their power to fund the mutilation of millions of African men. Feminists are racist, what a surprise. They allied with the Ku Klux Klan in their early days and advocated for white supremacy. The biggest suffragettes promoted white purity and saw other races as subhuman and needing extermination. So it is no wonder that this racism continues, as the whole goal of the movement is to be hateful towards men. Feminism is without a doubt the gender KKK. Male genital mutilation is a way for society to control male pleasure. This is confirmed for why it was first popularized in the United States. It was done to boys who were caught pleasuring themselves. Specifically to quote, dull the organ as a Jewish philosopher put it. Male genital mutilation is all about spite towards men and society exerting its dominance over the male sex and mutilating them when they are infants. On top of this, over 100 babies die from this barbaric practice every year. This is mostly due to loss of blood from the procedure. If a product even had as few as 2 deaths, it would be pulled from shelves to avoid lawsuits. This is not the case with male genital mutilation. Society has a vested interest in making boys suffer out of spite. This is not even counting the injuries that these babies have to sustain because their parents hate them. Babies have their glands or even entire organ cut off due to this wrongly termed procedure. These men have to live with these severe injuries to an intimate area for the rest of their life. Plus many suffer from such mutilations that the skin on their penis breaks when they get aroused, causing severe pain and bleeding. Parents know and understand this as they are willing to put their newborn baby through such a procedure and go through with it to show the son his place and that the mother controls him. This all happens while the mother gleefully announces that she is mutilating her son over social media. She even laughs at the pain she caused her son. This adds to my theory that there are much more psychopaths in the world than previously estimated, as so many parents do just this. And this psychopathy is only directed at men, as women are given privilege due to gynocentrism. These parents are worse than child molesters or pedos, as the latter group do not remove a part of the child's sexual organ. It is all part of the female dominance instinct to use and destroy men, even their own sons. It is to leave their perverse mark on them as a symbol of dominance and control over the son. When parents say it is done out of love, that is code word for bringing the child into a misandric system that they are a part of and marking their son as proof. The son is marked for servitude, just as his father before him was. It is also very telling that 85% of the people involved in the male mutilation industry are women. Women are 85% of nurses and OBs who wheel in, strap in, and do the actual mutilation. Then they dispose of the tissue to make facial creams sold for women. Parts of men's bodies are being cut off and sold literally for the pleasure of women. This follows how women attack helpless children, and society does nothing about it to preserve female dominance, but this time the privilege is also to have uncut genitals. Then that child grows up to have sexual dysfunction with a 4.5 greater chance of erectile dysfunction. All while the mother herself is privileged as has never felt a knife to her genitals. There was never such a thing as protecting children, only platitudes to affirm the status quo of female privilege. The mother, an intact person who didn't have her foreskin or clitoral hood cut off, demanding that her son be mutilated. This is the dynamic between men and women. The woman spites the man due to her social dominance instinct, and the man is powerless against it due to gynocentric male hostile men upholding the woman's privilege. This is not even mentioning the description of the procedure itself, where the baby is taken, strapped into a device specifically for this procedure, and not given strong enough anesthetic or even enough time for it to kick in. The doctor then forces a probe to separate the foreskin that is fused together as the baby screams in pain. Then a device is placed into the skin itself where it crushes and kills the cells that connect it to the rest of the penis. The doctor then cuts around the clamped skin, and a raw bleeding wound is left, with the infant in shock. Yes, the quote sleeping through the procedure is the baby going into shock. This explains why boys have a much harder time feeding than girls, and have a potentially lower pain tolerance among other neurological problems. Because their cortisol levels spiked dramatically and remained that way a long time after, during their first days on the planet. The doctors know this, and nurses fully understand this, but they keep on doing it. Why? They want to torture males and show them their place in as many ways as possible, and genital mutilation is one of them. Those same people would be weeping and crying tears upon hearing stories of female mutilation. But they gleefully hold down boys and cut their most private area, while their lungs nearly burst from the pain, which does happen. Further adding to proof of my theory that a lot more people, mainly women, are psychopathic than previously thought, and their psychopathy being directed at men. This is evidenced by all the people who push this mutilation, the parents and society wanting it to continue. More proof that people should have to register for a license and go through rigorous testing before they can have children. As to the people that push this mutilation and make up random arguments for maiming and torturing babies, they are child abusers themselves. They have a vested interest in attacking men. They are low-life scum who target the weakest class in society and go after them to deny them the utmost basic pleasures. If it were up to me, I would make hunting down and imprisoning these people among the top priorities. That is how these people need to be viewed for any real change to be done towards protecting children. And no, there is no such thing as a medically necessary circumcision. Phimosis goes away in puberty as hormones are released that separate the fused foreskin from the glands. Any issues that pop up are the parents' fault for trying to retract the foreskin, thus causing scarring on the inside of the skin, which leads to the vast majority of foreskin-related problems. Any issues in adulthood can be treated through stretching or creams, and those problems are very rare. In fact, it is estimated around 1 in 5 women have phimosis of the clitoral hood, while the rate is 1 out of 100 for men. The individuals that push male mutilation are not brainwashed into thinking the mutilation is beneficial. They just want to attack men out of misandry. This is the same thing that drives conscription, hatred for men, and a desire to see them suffer. This is another topic of how people claim that things caused by misandry are just ignorant and good-intentioned. This notion will be debunked in another video. Also, aesthetics are brought up as an excuse to justify mutilating babies. Young girls don't receive breast implants, so this argument is invalid. The fact is, no one actually likes men, so they use the guise of aesthetics to purposefully spite their sons and other males. It is like how quote-unquote toughening men up is claimed to be beneficial, but in reality is exploiting and abusing males. Any attack on the male sex is labeled as good because it suits the gynocentric system in attacking and abusing men. As for the whole culture and religion thing, misandry is everywhere. It says a lot about how religions view men as only pawns, when they command chopping on the genitals of boys but not girls. It is all a gynocentric farce trying to opt the man into serving his betters who do not get mutilated. A real loving God would never do something as vile and disgusting as the myths in the Old Testament depict. People hide behind tales told by insane people thousands of years ago to keep men enslaved over a rational and just society. The reason why this mutilation happens and is allowed in Western countries is that the driver behind these acts is identical. Female elevation, which is gynocentrism. Women have no respect and feel entitled to abuse men. They deselect men who will not be abused and breed with men they can manipulate and control. Thus, we get a whole society of gynocentric men who are gaslit by their parents to view themselves as worthless unless they are serving women. And the cycle of male abuse, including the torture of helpless male babies, continues and is perpetuated by spiteful mothers. In the rare case that the mother opposes the practice in speech but goes along with the father, the mother still has the authority over every choice including mutilation. It is an example of malicious moral cowardice. Such a mother would fight tooth and nail if that child was a girl. But she just sits back and signs the mutilation form when it's a boy. Quite another example of how people don't give two shits about children. Everything is about pampering the mother, so the mother does what is easy for herself and has no backbone because she has no love for her son, only herself, which is caused by her natural contempt for him. Now to call out the parents who subject their sons to such a vile act, whether directly, through moral cowardice, or any other millions of false justifications. These parents have not a single ounce of love for their child, as they are perpetuating one of the most vile acts known to man. Torturing helpless children, and mutilating the most sensitive part of their body. Truly disgusting and something that would be expected of a lower order of life and not humans. To say that cutter parents need to be reminded of how they violated their sons is an understatement. They need to have their children taken away from them, as they are proven to be a threat to them. They are also psychopaths, which are proven when they see a large bleeding wound on their son's genitals, and do not say anything or change their mind and tell others. The least these so-called parents can do is give their money away to 4gen, a company trying to restore this part of the male anatomy. But in a just world they deserve prison on top of that. They are also cowards who would never go through the same thing they subjected their infant son to. Shame on them all. As for pro-male men, we need to call out everyone who promotes misandry in even the most subtle of ways. Because they lead to atrocities like male genital mutilation, to be allowed because of a system that spites boys. This plague has already attacked a third of the male population, and men need to be radical to put a stop to it. Sitting around on this issue is enabling the abuse of countless boys, and you cannot rightfully call yourself pro-male if you support the torture and deprivation of sexual anatomy of male infants.